Welcome to Let's Be Heard, where we're having unfiltered real talks about women's health. I was so sick of feeling like women's health was a dirty topic and a stranger in my own body. So why not create a space for women to discover, relate, learn, and feel empowered? So that's what I do. I break down barriers, share stories, and create the health dialogue we wish we had growing up. I'm your host, Maddie Holman, a women's health advocate and also a VC investor. Disclaimer though, this podcast is intended to be information only. That means this is not a source of medical advice. We aim to share stories, awareness, and resources available, but for any medical advice, seek out your provider. Welcome, Juliette. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me, Maddie. It's awesome to be here.
So I always love to start off with the backstory. So how did your endometriosis journey shape your decision to start Endo 45?
Well, I guess it 100% shaped my decision to start Endo 45 and the fact that I was actually quite late to the endo journey compared to others in my life. I didn't get slammed with all of the symptoms until I was closer to 30. When I decided to come off the pill, it had been somewhat masking the symptoms or keeping them within normal ranges, whatever normal is, which shouldn't be anything really. And I guess at that point, I'd already lived through my teenage years and my 20s knowing what life should and can look like when you're not battling with a chronic illness. And I knew that whatever was unfolding with my body, because I didn't know I had endo at the time, was just not right. And I needed to course correct this. And I had the will and the drive, and I had things like private health insurance and time on my side to really dig in and find out, hey, what's going on here? What's going on with my body? And why is this happening? And this isn't right. And I've got to course correct it. Otherwise, things are going to get really catastrophic because they'd already gotten pretty bad, total deep chronic fatigue, living with pain every day, relationship breakdown, and essentially almost walking away from my career as well. There's only so far you can fall until you're at absolute rock bottom. And that happened really rapidly for me. And I was like, no, I'm an engineer. I understand systems for a living. I find the inefficiencies and I course correct them. So, and the body is just another series of systems. So I can do this. I have an appreciation for gut health and things like that already and figure out what's going on. And so it was through that journey of self-testing, self-experimentation, understanding what I now know as endometriosis at a cellular biochemical body systems level. Then eventually, luckily, getting an endometriosis diagnosis along that journey and very rapidly nurturing those things in my body that were completely broken back into health, and then getting back to life and starting a family and going back to my career. And I was like, oh, okay, health blip, done. Really didn't have an appreciation that this is not what pretty much every other person with endometriosis's journey looks like. Once I went back to my career, that was right at the rise of when endometriosis really started to come to light and the community started to have a voice and things started to come out in the media. And I'd have colleagues and friends being like, my daughter probably has endo, can you speak to her? And I started to accumulate all this knowledge that had a window in life and I guess a journey with endo that so few others get to experience. I was able to be completely in control of my health and my body. I was able to command certain health outcomes because of my health insurance. I had the mindset to be able to reverse engineer what was going on for me. And then a lot of luck came into it with my surgeon, the timing of my surgery, all of these things I had no idea were important at the time came together. I'm sitting on a lot here, including the things I then did to put my symptoms and my pain into remission. And nobody's getting prescribed this. Nobody's even getting a diagnosis, let alone even moderately good, let alone great treatment. And the ability to reclaim their lives, the ability to actually start to live well with endo. And I respect that that's not potentially remission for everyone like me, but at least to feel better than they do today, at least to have most months where they can get out of bed pretty much every day of the month. They can go to school, they can go to work, they can do life, they can love, they can laugh, they can do those sports that they love to do. And so many people have been living for a decade or more with that as not a possibility. Like, that is not the framework of their life. And even to the point where potentially it started so young, they don't even know what it feels like to live at your fullest like health capacity and to live well and to really have life without pain and chronic debilitating symptoms. And all of that together really started to build a deep frustration for me. And that deep frustration grew. Every book I read, every podcast I listened to back then, why isn't anyone putting all of what I know in one place? And then that grew even further when I tried to help people one-on-one, realize there's this psychological behavioral piece where you can't just tell people flat information and have them run away and implement everything you said. People need to be nurtured, motivated, coached. Mindsets need to be changed. Belief systems need to be changed. And I was like, how do I do this? And my now co-founder just joked one day and said, I think you should build an app for that. And I'm like, ha ha ha, you're so funny. Back to my engineering job. And then it must have planted a seed because one energetic door opened after another. And 5 years later, here we are. We've left our big engineering careers. We're full-time on the app and Endo 45, trying to build FemTech for where it's really needed in this really undertreated and underserved community of women's health, and also trying to build a brand and a movement and just trying to use my story to empower others that life can look different than it does today. And I have the full belief that if you implement what's in our app and you go all in, everyone will see their EndoFit score, which is your measure of how you're feeling, increase to some degree. I haven't had anyone yet say that they've done it all and it hasn't helped at all. So that's what
Wow.
I'm here to do.
That's incredible. And I know endometriosis, as you said, it's definitely something where a lot of people are just starting to hear about it more recently, but it's been something that people have been suffering with for a while. I even had a friend who got misdiagnosed from a OBGYN saying, oh, just take some aspirin, and then had another friend thankfully tell her that she should go see her OBGYN and was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis. So it's just wild that there's still that lack of awareness, which can be harmful. Before diving into your company more, want to do a little bit of endometriosis 101 for folks who may be listening in that may not be as well versed in what that is. So could you explain exactly what endometriosis is?
Yeah, can do. So we're now starting to understand that broadly it's a neuroimmune disorder. And I like to break that down even further and say it's a chronic inflammatory condition. So largely everything that you experience as a result of it is mostly due to this chronic inflammatory war that's going on. And that war happened because it's rooted in immune dysfunction. And what I mean is there's an endo-like cell. And they say they're like the cells in the lining of your uterus, like your endometrial cells. They are very similar, but they are not the same. They don't come from there, but they're very similar. So they're floating around in your body. And then something makes them go rogue, kind of the same as when a cell decides to become cancerous, whether it's environmental exposure, epigenetics, whatever it may be. And we know there's a large list for why that happens with an endometrial-like cell. It goes endo-like, it's rogue, and it goes, it gets nasty. And at that point, it's your immune system's job to clear that cell out, to go, bugger off, get out of my body, I don't want you here. Except with people with endo, our immune system can't recognize it, doesn't understand that, and is very deeply confused. And instead it says, welcome to the body party, and actually goes as far as plugging that cell in, giving it some oxygen, some blood supply, and seeds that cell as the beginning of an endometriosis lesion. And at that point, endo is so sophisticated that it can outsmart your immune system at every step of the way after that. It has mega defense systems like cancer, where it can fight back with, it's fully self-fueled, so it makes its own estrogen. As much as we think it's our estrogen that fuels it, it makes its own estrogen with no support of progesterone, which is what calms estrogen down. And it is incredibly self-sufficient in its war. It just keeps coming up with new ways to fight back in this inflammation war, and it's really good at spreading rapidly, getting into tiny little nooks and crannies. And that's why these really painful lesions can appear kind of everywhere in the pelvis, but also anywhere from the bum to the brain, they've been found. And why it's often accompanied not just the lesions, by a lot of adhesions and scar tissue, because you've got this war waging 24/7 between your immune system and the lesions, trying to get rid of these lesions, but really it's just creating a war zone of scar tissue and adhesions. And all of that together creates a lot of pain for people, often quite constant chronic pain. And then on top of that, because it's like a chronic inflammatory condition, you're now starting to put a drain on every system of the body, which means gut health starts to fail, nervous system starts to fail, hepatic system starts to fail. And so when these systems start to fail, all of those other great symptoms start to crop up, like massive bloating and endo belly, chronic GI conditions, total fatigue, brain fog, all of these things that are just equally as debilitating as the pain. And then to make matters even worse, when endo is left a while, and that a while doesn't even have to be that long, they say that we can term chronic pain chronic once it's been there for longer than 3 months, and you think some people have been battling a decade. That pain can become neuropathic. So not only do those lesions start to tap into your nervous system and your nerves, they affect nerve endings. So removing them doesn't necessarily remove the pain, but also that constant pain signaling starts to seriously upregulate your nervous system to the point where you get pain sensitization. And so a small amount of pain can feel immense. And then even if you remove the pain, the signals of pain can still happen. And your brain still thinks there's a lot of pain there. And so people have this really terrible form of pain, which becomes quite uncontrollable with normal painkillers and medication. And so we often find people in a pain tangle that requires a lot of nervous system, mind, body, soul regulation in order to calm down the pain signals because they've been going on so long. That, in a nutshell, is endo.
Wow.
And that's why it's such a debilitating disease.
That's insane. That I feel for every woman who was battling with that and still is too, that besides just getting diagnosed, even if you can get to a point as you had with remission, having that pain where it's beyond actual pain, it's ingrained in your body, it's phantom pain, but it still feels so real. That just saddens me that that's still a big part of a lot of women's days, trying to keep managing that pain. And I'm curious from your experience and just in general, how long does it usually take to get diagnosed, and what kind of tests or doctors really are the ones that you should go to?
So I think the average globally is still sitting around 10 years. Last checked, it was about 8.7 years on average to be diagnosed. And that's twofold, largely because of the fact that we don't know what to look for and how to look for it. And that largely endometriosis wasn't even a thing people had, even though we've known about it for 186 years. It's been around. So doctors weren't diagnosing it. But at the same time, currently to get a formal official diagnosis, you need to undergo a laparoscopic surgery, and it needs to be cited, but then it also needs to be biopsied, and that biopsy needs to come back positive. It hasn't been a simple way for primary care to check and test officially for it, which is a big piece as to why I think it's gone largely swept under the rug or tried to be defined as other things. And that's another reason, is because individually these symptoms can be chalked up to individual conditions. So your gut and your GI issues are just IBS. Your heavy, painful periods, oh, just being a woman. Your chronic fatigue, oh, just burnout from work, right? Or trauma or life or that bad relationship. So anxiety is a big one, and a lot of people get prescribed anxiety medication as well, or you're not sleeping. But realistically, all of these symptoms are actually being driven by the fact that your body is waging this war with endometriosis. And so that's largely why it's so hard. And right now, today, if you were to go and get a diagnosis, other than in France, if you have enough what we call red flags, you can be symptomatically diagnosed with endo. And a good women's health practitioner who specializes in endo, a good gynecologist who specializes in endo, or any other kind of health coach who specializes in endo will largely be able to symptomatically help you decide it's most likely endo. And then other things you can do if you're waiting for that surgery, or you're not sure you want the surgery, or you just want to understand more deeply, is this endo or not? How bad is it? Where is it? The new standard that's coming out of Australia and New Zealand as well right now is that a good transvaginal ultrasound is going to be recommended as the number one first step to trying to diagnose endometriosis before surgery. And when I say good, I mean the sonographer has to be extremely skilled at how to take that imaging, and then they have to be extremely skilled at how to write the report in a way that suggests the right indications for endo or adeno. And that really is only checking in and around the uterus, the pouch of Douglas, so behind the uterus, that really localized area. And we know endo can be wider than that. What my advice would be, if you're experiencing any of the red flags of endometriosis, we can go through some of them if you like, don't keep going to new practitioners or keep getting your GP to refer you or keep asking your friends, who do you go to? Or go on to Nancy's Nook, go on to the WhatsApp forums like My Avdo, and ask your community, where's the best place to go to try and get symptomatically or through surgery diagnosed. And don't give up. Don't wait. Don't be told it's in your head. Don't be told to just take the pill and go home. And by all means, take the pill, but keep looking for your answers. Keep looking for your diagnosis because it's deeply important. And hopefully the ability to do that far quicker is just around the corner. So in France right now, you can get a saliva test called the Zwig test, which has quite high efficacy, not extremely high, not 99%, but in the 80s, 90s, it can give you a yes or no, you have endo, which is pretty amazing. And that's spreading throughout Europe as we speak. And then out of Australia, Biomics are building a blood biomarker test called the ProMarker. And that is going to be a really superior blood test to be able to, at really high efficacies, like above 95%, say yes or no, you have endo, which is just going to be a game changer for everyone everywhere, still questioning what they have, but worst of all, still being completely gaslit that what they're experiencing is completely normal. And that is such a large amount of that is still happening right now in the 21st century in Western countries. I'm really excited for that.
I completely agree with you. It's the gaslighting thing across women's health, but particularly for ones where it's conditions that are still being discovered, new things about it, and learning how we can better diagnose it and then treat it. Anything where there's opportunities to lower that barrier to access, less invasive than surgery, to be able to give women answers on what's going on in their body. That's great that there's efforts doing that in Europe and in New Zealand and Australia. What are the most common symptoms of endometriosis, or red flags, as you put it? And what are some of the treatment options that exist today?
Yeah, so I guess the biggest red flag is pelvic pain and chronic pelvic pain. So pelvic pain that persists over a period of days or weeks, and in particular period pain that maybe isn't linked to your cycle, although some people only have it when they have their period, some people have it all month long. So that's the main thing, is chronic pelvic pain is not normal. And there is a reason for it. It may not necessarily be endo. There are other reasons to have chronic pelvic pain, but regardless, you want to know. You want to understand that, because we do not need to walk around with chronic pelvic pain consistently for the rest of our lives. So let's fix that. Some of the other major ones are the endo belly, the feeling deeply pregnant. And I've experienced IBS in my life. I would go as far as saying the bloating is double the intensity of IBS. And then we're thinking about deep fatigue, pain when you pee, poop, or have sex. Those are really key ones, and those should be big red flags that it's time to see someone. Chronic fatigue, anxiety, depression, these things starting to layer on are big ones as well. But really that pain, anytime, peeing, pooping, weeing, period, with the gastrointestinal are probably the two main ones that we see. And then there's other things that come in, like not being able to conceive for more than a year, fainting, vomiting, anything extreme like that. Unexplained leg pain, like sciatica type pain that's not from an injury. There's a few things, and our app has them all in, but to be honest, you can ask Google AI and it'll be pretty good at giving you the top red flags and the top symptoms. And then your second part of the question was, what are the treatment options? This can be big or this can be small, this answer. And I guess right now today, clinically, the treatment options are very limited, and We often say we're trying to treat complex disease with some blunt tools, but the biggest one is hormonal birth control or some form of hormonal suppression. And for a big chunk of the endometriosis population, that will be successful and that will reduce their symptoms to some degree. But I need to stress that there is no clinical literature that says that any form of birth control or hormonal suppression or induced menopause definitely stops disease progression. So you are just helping with symptom management. And there is still a large chunk of the medical fraternity that deeply believe that if you stop the menses, you stop the period, you stop the disease. But we now know that that's not the case. So there's 65 different phenotypes of endometriosis, and they all behave differently. And I'm sure there's probably more that we're still finding. Some are more sensitive to sex hormones and the sex hormone balance in your body. And so no doubt some of them go a lot quieter, slow down their progression. The symptoms reduce when you do switch off that system in the body. And so there's nothing for it to be fed by or to be encouraged by, but it is still capable of making its own estrogen and progesterone and still progressing and spreading in the body. It just might do it at a slower rate with less symptoms. So there's some of those flavors, but you don't know what flavor you have yet, because right now today we can't test for phenotypes and we don't understand how to categorize them clinically. We just know they exist from the scientific research. So you don't know what pill's going to help you. You don't know which one's the best for you. You don't know. So it is trial and error with the hormonal birth control, and you'll often find people that have tried everyone under the sun. Sometimes they've layered on 2 or 3 together. I personally have an affliction to that, but some people need it. Some people's bleeding is so severe that somehow we just have to help them make it stop. And then it's surgery after that to try and remove what's there and hope that that reduces pain and symptoms. But both of those things are really just treating at a surface level the physical nature of these lesions and at the surface. They're not treating at the root cause. So if you have endometriosis skillfully removed, it can still grow back. So root cause treatments don't exist today, but I hope they're just around the corner. And I think if anything, they're going to be in that neuroimmune or immunotherapy type space. They're not going to be a hormonal treatment, as much as people are still charging down that road. And you will get more clever with the hormonal treatments, and they'll get better at helping manage the disease, but actually root cause treatment is going to be quite different. And then everything else you can do, which is basically all within your control, is integrative, holistic, and multimodal. So when we talk about the fact that these 4 big systems in your body and all of them are helping to wage this war, then all of them are dysfunctional, all of them are exhausted, all of them are like, give me more, I need more, my supplies are running low, I can't do this anymore, I can't run your body normally and fight this war. So we have to almost go to the nth degree to help nourish, nurture those systems of the body and bring them back into a place of homeostasis, or power them with the armory they need to fight for you rather than against you, because actually when they're dysfunctional, they can actually help endo rather than help fight it. Your systems will just exasperate the more we let these systems just deteriorate from low reserves. So that's getting on top of your gut health, getting on top of your detox pathways, getting on top of your nervous system, and getting on top of your immune system. And that's what I did personally. I scurried around and found the simplest, most common sense, most, yes, scientifically evidence-backed. That is the way the body works. It is the way it likes to heal when you get out of its ways to help those systems, and boiled them down into some really simple habits. I did them all essentially overnight. I'm very A-type, just changed my whole life. And within 3 to 6 months after my surgery, because I did it at the same time, I was living pain and symptom free. Within 9 months, I was starting to do a few things, like not live by the book, and was like, oh, wow, there's no pain. There's no symptoms. What's going on? And then the rest is history. I'm 8 years in pain and symptom free, so technically in endo remission, started a family, all of those things. And what I did isn't rocket science, but it's what your body deeply needs when it has a chronic inflammatory condition. So how can I tell people to do it? How can I encourage them, motivate them to do it, and make the things that I know pretty much everyone can do and is probably not doing a lot of physical therapy to help with pain, pelvic floor physiotherapy, and a lot of gentle movement, and really relaxing everything in that area, not just from a physical sense, ligament and muscular sense, but also from a nervous system sense, because so much of our nervous system is in our pelvis, in our jaw. And so all of those things come together, and there are a lot of gadgets that can help you build a toolbox to manage your pain flares or manage your gut flares and manage your periods and those terrible times of the months for you, to just do it better than you're currently doing it today. And I would say arm yourself with all the tools and then really start to dig. That will give you a bit in the tank to actually think, maybe there is one thing in my life I could deeply change, and then go after one thing after another and start to really make the switch so that you're nurturing those systems of the body.
Nice. And I think that's a great segue into what you do at Endo 45. What does that experience look like? And just walk through the app and also the EndoFit score and what that measures.
So the app is largely based around your EndoFit score. And what is it when you first come into the app? And I guess we find, to no surprise, most people are off track or struggling. And the idea is that we get you into the managing or even best self range. And it's not relative to anyone else or some scale of where we think everyone with endo should be. It's relative to you. And you can change that relativity as well. If you start to think that actually a goal of having a certain amount of pain-free days a month is not a reality anymore, then you can lower that bar. But equally, if you have surgery or you do get a Mirena and it starts to really work and your pain levels have halved, so now maybe I can go for completely pain-free, you can up that goal in the app and your EndoFit score will adjust to guide you there. And so get this EndoFit score to increase. Of course, you've got to track every day. So it's a symptom tracker, it's a cycle tracker. You've got to arm yourself with some things that are really going to help you. Is it tense machines? Is it acupuncture? Is it deep breathing habit that you flex every day? Is it nutrition and really changing your diet and getting your digestion back on track? All of these things are in the app to teach, explain, give you those aha moments about why that symptom's so bad when I have endo, and that's what's actually happening in my body to proliferate that symptom. So course correcting it makes sense. But then really the rubber hits the road and the gold is in the healthy habit. And so I boiled what I did and what is evidence-backed and practitioner supported into 6 golden healthy habits. And if you can build these healthy habits, if you can master them and you can do all that in the app, you can track them and start to master them, then that's really when you're going to see things change. And that the order of how much that changes is completely dependent on how severe your condition is, how much of it has now become neuro and nervous system regulated, and where it is in your body. Some people are living with it on major organs, and it wouldn't matter how good your gut health is, you're still going to have some pretty intense and extremely painful gut symptoms. I 100% believe that everyone can feel better than they do today living with this condition. And what's super powerful about it is it's everything you can do while you wait. It's all within your control. And some people will want to have it financially covered, and some insurances do, some don't, depends where you are in the world. Largely, you can self-teach and self-do a lot of what's in our app. And then if you want to, you can spend a bit of your own money getting some extra tools and bits and pieces while you wait for something else to work, while you wait for a cure, which I hope is right around the corner. And I know the endometriosis research fraternity is doing their damnedest. We often hear there's not enough money, there's no one's researching it, no one's researching the female body, but I can tell you that fraternity is growing by the day and they're extremely motivated. They may be a decade behind in their research, but they are trying to find all the answers and solutions. So
yeah, I've heard that constantly with women's health too, in terms of, oh, it's not a priority, even though all of health really is women's health when you think about it. But I think also one of the exciting things that I've seen too over the last couple years is women demanding more, and that just dealing with the pain or just thinking it's all in your head is not acceptable anymore, and that we deserve to feel just as good as every other person. And I think what you're doing is incredible in terms of sharing what your experience is, building a community around that to help others deal with their endometriosis while they're either waiting for surgery or helping them even get into endo remission, because I think every little bit helps move the needle in that way, and that awareness for more people to think, oh, wow, either that's what I have, or I know someone who has this, or the healthcare system in each country to start to recognize that it's a huge problem. And so I love what you're doing. And I'm curious too, from women who've been on your app, what are some of the success stories you've seen so far?
A big part of what I get to do is also having a cohort of people who use the app that I get to work with one-on-one and hear their feedback and hear their testimonial and help coach and be that mentor for them as well. It's just is a big passion project for me. But their stories are awesome. And we are looking to wrap that into some official clinical research next year around the usage of our app. But for now, it's anecdotal feedback from our users. And I've had people go from staring down the barrel of another surgery to more pain-free days in a month, have left work to go on a sabbatical to try and course correct whatever's going on with them in their body and manage their endo. I'm restudying. I'm a full student. I've moved to a different place in the country. I don't need another surgery. I'm basically pain-free. I'm back to doing all the sports that I love. And other ones being I was fainting twice a month. I was having 2 periods a month. Sometimes I would have periods that were a couple of months long to that's a thing of the past, and I can now go out and actually have fun and not live in fear of the disease. And I think that really is the theme and the flavor at the crux of all of this, is that living in fear of this disease, not knowing when it will strike, how bad it will strike, how you will feel, can you achieve what you need to achieve every day, every week, every month, in your home life, in your work life, is probably at the crux of the demon, really. And it's being able to empower people to the point where they no longer live in fear of it. Because they can better understand it and track it, and there may be a pattern to it, so then they're more in control because they know there's a pattern. 2, in the same respect, they can start to identify what helps and what doesn't help, and know that if they do the thing that doesn't help, say it's outside their control, even a day or a week of really stressful meetings, they can expect a bad month that month and then reshape what their life looks like and allow themselves rest. Or it's right through to actually barely have symptoms at a level that matters anymore. I might still be having symptoms, but I can be out with friends and, well, I have to undo my top button. I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but it's nothing like it was before. So I think that's getting people to that place where they're deeply in control of their own body with this disease, and they feel that like they are the CEO of their health again, and they have some level of control over what is such a brutal disease. I think is the most important thing that we're here to do, and is really the flavor of what I see. Most people come in wanting to improve their quality of life, and that's what most people get, because the tools they can arm themselves with, and then if they're really committed to doing the healthy habits, gives you an element of that. And then just by tracking, can't measure what you don't track, can't understand what you don't track, can't control what you don't measure.
Incredible. And I love the CEO of your own life and your own body. I just love that statement, and being able to feel empowered and knowing what's going on with your body, or just have some type of influence of I can try this and see how it works, versus just feeling completely helpless. And it's something that I've constantly talked about with women's health, why we should never have to feel we are strangers in our own body, not knowing what's going on and just having to deal with it. And I love that is what a lot of the women who've gone on your app have really experienced. I want to switch over to my favorite set of questions, which is really around myth busting, taboos, unfiltered real talk. And so I want to start off with, what do you think is something almost every woman with endometriosis experiences, but rarely ever talks about?
Pain with sex. Yeah, I think it's probably almost a given for everyone with endometriosis, and not even your holistic practitioners are talking about it. So in a clinical setting or in a mentor coach setting or anyone that you're looking to for answers and help, it's never being brought up. And social media is only really just starting to talk about it. And even in that respect, it's taking some pretty bold people with some pretty gruesome lived experience to front up in that space. It is one of the most damaging symptoms to our lives, because everything else that's happening to us, it's horrible, it's hard, it's terrible, it can really outwardly affect relationships, but it's ours to carry. When intimacy breaks down in a relationship, it's for the relationship to carry. And if there's a lot of potentially shame, lack of confidence around having those conversations, and then honestly, to a large degree, not knowing how to support one another or do things differently or navigate it differently. My lived experience is that it doesn't end well. And so I think it's the one that we should be coaching and mentoring and teaching people with endo how to navigate more, and how to navigate it with your partner and with your family largely as well, because when that one-to-one core partnership starts to break down, the ripple effect through the family nucleus can be pretty big as well. And we don't want that. This is one condition where you deeply need a support crew. You need people who want to side upside you and do those healthy habits with you. Be your accountability buddy. You need people that, when you literally can't get out of bed, are going to just take the reins and get on with life, and also bring you what you need and know what you need in those moments.
I can completely see that, especially how you said with having endometriosis, the symptoms, like it's a lot, and having enough people to be there for you and help support you is huge, because it's not just physically, it's mentally, emotionally. I cannot even imagine, because I don't have it, but it's just that amount of pain is just incredible that women continue to power through and try to fight it every day, because sometimes I don't know if men had it that they would be able to withstand it as much as women. One of the other questions I wanted to ask is a myth that people think when you're pregnant with endometriosis, that it can lead to endometriosis being cured or you don't have it anymore. What was that like, especially for you, having gone through pregnancy, and what's wrong with that notion?
Yeah, so I think again, it's terrible that we're seeing people as young as 14, 15, 16, 17 getting more than told, sometimes pressured into having children, or needing to family plan, or needing to think about when they might want to have children, or being told just have a baby, it will fix it. And it's got to go. I like to hope that the people who are saying that are slowly being phased out, and that we're on the brink of a new generation and a new way of thinking around the disease and how we triage and treat in that primary care setting. Especially, like I say, as simpler ways to diagnose come about, it should be simpler for primary carers to refer you for a blood test, or et cetera, and just get the real answer, and then refer you to the right specialist if they don't know themselves. So with that one in particular, for me, I guess, to be honest, by the time I had my son, I'd worked with a lot of people who were deeply concerned at a very young age about their fertility, and they'd already had their AMH, so the amount of eggs you have measured, they were already talking about egg retrieval, and they were being scaremongered into that alongside their endometriosis surgery. We need to consider these things while we're giving you surgery, which is fine and fair, and I agree, but it creates so much anxiety in your very early 20s thinking, will I ever have kids? I mean, when I was in my early 20s, I don't know what I was thinking, but I wasn't thinking about having kids. So it seeds some really deep anxiety around that fertility journey from a very young age. I didn't experience that growing up. As I said, I got my symptoms later, and then I didn't really connect the dots when I was listening to all these stories, that it was because there was this other narrative in there, which is people were genuinely being told that if they have kids and they get it done early, it will fix their endometriosis. But more to the point, I think really what most here in New Zealand we're being told is do it now, have kids now, because we cannot predict what this disease will do. Like that, they, they're not being told that, but we don't know how severe you're going to be. We don't know where it's going to spread to. We can't control it. And underlying that statement, that's what that means, is like, we've got nothing for you. There's no cure or treatment for this. So if you want to have kids, I suggest you do it, because we all know that 40 to 50% of people with endo struggle to conceive or can't conceive. Like they're sitting there going, you want to have kids, do it soon, because we don't know if you're going to be in that 40% or not. So that's largely where it comes from, and that's really tough. And I think we're on the brink now of being able to really triage and treat people completely differently and take into consideration their fertility concerns, journey, and goals and outcome, but also take into consideration there might be a decade before they're ready for that. And how can we ensure that that's a good journey for them once they get there? And I think that's essentially what happened for me. I had a successful surgery. I got onto my symptoms really early. As soon as they were uncovered by the pill, obviously I had stage 4, so I'd been growing for a decade, but I wasn't at that point where it was neuropathic or anything, or it had spread too far on any major organs. So treat it, get rid of it, get what you can, and then let's reset the body. Let's nurture you back into health, because all the things that I put in the app and I did to put endo into remission supercharges fertility. And inflammation and chronic inflammation in the pelvis is one of the main undiagnosed reasons for having infertility if you don't have any other key obstructions or anything like that. So let's treat that. Let's get on top of that and make sure that that environment for fertility is there and ready to go and supercharged for when you're ready to get there. And if it's a really important thing for you and you have a really severe case of endometriosis, yes, regular check-ins, yes, a plan, but make a plan. And good endometriosis specialists and fertility specialists will want to look at you as a whole person, will want to look at your whole life, all of your considerations, and help you map and plan the best journey. I didn't really have this because I went through it older. I hadn't been told, although I had actually. That's a lie. My surgeon did say, I want to put you on birth control immediately after the surgery, which I said, no, thank you. And not so nice words. And then he said, you need to think about having children now. And I think I must have just subconsciously ignored it because it never landed. And I just went on and did my life and was like, whatever. I then got better. And then I was like, once you're better, these sorts of things don't circulate anymore. You don't have the fear around the disease and around your fertility and your options and your life, like to live the way you want. Yeah, and back to your original point, which is why are people being told? Like I said, 65 different phenotypes, maybe more. When you stop menses by being pregnant, yes, the symptoms reduce. And yes, they can almost go away during pregnancy. Will they come back after pregnancy? In most cases, they do after, and everyone's got a different time period. I know women who've popped their babies out and the next month they're bleeding through 2 pads and their endo is fully back. In my case or others, I definitely noticed a full reduction in symptoms for 2 years postpartum, but then noticed things creeping back after that. And if I didn't go back on my protocol, I knew that I was on a trajectory to potentially reinvigorating endometriosis in my body and nip that in the bud and get back on top of staying in remission. So that postpartum period of when you get that lovely time of no endo symptoms doesn't mean no endo growth, just again, reduction of menses and a change in the balance of the hormones in your body, a reduction of symptoms is different for everyone. And there is a cohort in the world who have genuinely had 2 or 3 babies and gone, oh, my endo went away. But went away, I would say typically means it's still in your body, it's still somewhere, but it may have just become dormant or started to regress. That may have been because of the pregnancy changes. We don't know. We just don't know enough about endo yet. But like I said, they all behave very differently. And you have no idea if you're in that subset or not. So I would say largely most people are not in that subset. Yeah. So don't bank on it and definitely don't think that pregnancies and hysterectomies should be the last things we try at the 11th hour when we've tried everything else, if they're not right for you right now. Some people right now, as they hear this, those 2 things will be right for them. But if you're 20-something, let's exhaust the suite of tools that we currently have before we go there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And last question I have, is there any other woman or someone doing great things in women's health that you think should be heard?
There's so many.
It's a very hard question.
How to choose? I should have pre-thought about this one. Can I do two?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so one from a advocacy influencer standpoint is this amazing woman called Amy Jane. She's in the UK and she has an account called Grow with Endo. And she just outs the reality of the endo belly and the pain and intimacy. And she's gorgeously raw and real. Her big ginormous belly is not a pregnant belly. She can't even get pregnant, which is cruel. But this is what endometriosis looks like. And I love her because it's not what you see with other accounts. She's really almost empowering through what she's doing rather than complaining. She's here to literally just normalize the taboo, which is very cool, and make other people feel seen and heard. So she's awesome. I would follow her if you're listening to this. And then in the tech side, something that I've come across, which I love, which you can get in the States, and it's on pre-order right now, is this thing called the Egg. And it is a little biosensor and a breathing apparatus and an app. And when you're having any kind of flare, like pain flare, anxiety flare, that creates an inflammatory or fight or flight response in your body, you pick up this little apparatus and you breathe into it with the app, and it measures 5 minutes of breath work. Not only does it guide you to breathe at the exact right hertz, that helps to lower inflammation with the app, and it's fun. You're like blowing the little balloon along the screen, but it's measuring your inflammation in real time. So you can actually see your inflammation come down as you breathe, and then feel that pain flare or whatever actually physically reduce in real time in those 5 or 10 minutes that you do that breath work. The company's called Seesaw and the apparatus is called the Egg, and it's about to hit the market. You can get pre-order now. You can get a discount through our app, actually, but it's for US customers only at the moment. But I just think not only have you created the perfect tool for the flare kit in those desperate moments where it's hell, the Tylenol's not working and the Advil and the 5 other things you've popped, and breath really does, and you can do it anytime, anywhere, it can be in your handbag, but then you've actually proved to the human this is working because you're showing physical inflammation markers reducing, and with reduction of inflammation and fight or flight and stress in the body, so should the pain, so should the anxiety, whatever that flare is, should come down. The migraine as well. She's a migraine sufferer herself, so she originally built it for migraines and then realized that there's so many chronic women's health conditions that this controls.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been wonderful hearing your story, what you're building with Endo 45. Before we wrap up, where can folks find more information if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, so endo45.com is everything about our app on the website. But if you just want to go ahead and download it and try it, just search Endo 45 on either App Store, Google or Apple. You can start a free trial and see if it's for you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm excited for others to hear more and hopefully a cure at some point.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thanks so much. That's a wrap on this week's episode of Let's Be Heard. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned what endometriosis is and what resources are out there. Big thanks to Juliet Oliver for sharing her personal experience dealing with endometriosis and how that led to her journey starting Endo 45. Want to learn more about Endo 45? Check out the links in the show notes. And if you can't get enough of LBH, hit subscribe and follow our podcast on Instagram. See you next time, LBH crew.